Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Remington string trimmer. I don't really remember what model this is, but it doesn't matter for purposes of this video. The customer complaint is that it won't start. It was running fine, and then the next time he went to use it, couldn't get it started. So the first thing I want to do is look in the fuel tank and see what he's been putting in there. And what I'm seeing is fuel that looks good. I don't see any water in it. It smells good. I'd like to pull the filter out and pressure test that fuel line, but the line's kind of short and I don't think I'll be able to get the filter out. And I'm going to skip that step. And it's probably a good thing I did, because right away I think I found the problem. You see how the carburetor wiggles back and forth? Well, that ain't no good. It's not supposed to do that. Anytime the carburetor is loose, we have a chance for an air leak. And if you have a big enough air leak, you're never going to be able to start the engine, because when the engine's trying to draw fuel and air in, and there's an air leak somewhere, then it's drawing in just straight air from that leak and not fuel and air through the carburetor. So we're going to look in the cylinder and see if this thing's been running lean and if it in fact has scored the cylinder. So I'm first getting the piston down to the bottom of its stroke, and then looking into the cylinder.
That's the best way to do this.
Boy, oh boy, you gotta settle down here, man. Alright, we're looking at the cylinder, and sure enough, I'm getting a glare off the light, but I see some carbon buildup, and I see some brown streaks on the cylinder wall, but I don't see any scoring or grooves or metal transfer or anything like that. That brown streaking might be some blow by past the piston rings. Trying to get a good look all the way around. And this thing is used and it's showing some signs of wear, but I'm not seeing anything that would concern me over a $100 trimmer. So we're going to move forward with the repair on this one. So that carburetor was loose, and it was not loose where it bolts to the cylinder. In fact, when I was wiggling the carburetor, it was wiggling the cylinder as well. So the cylinder came loose from the crankcase. When we pull this end cap off the engine here, you'll see that it also is the seal for this end of the crankcase. There's going to be an O-ring that seals this end. We'll be able to look right at the end of the crank and the connecting rod. We just got 3 screws. There's 2 fine thread screws and 1 coarse thread. Sometimes this O-ring on this seal, on the end of this cap here, sometimes that O-ring goes bad. But this one looks like it's in decent shape. So there we have our crank and our connecting rod. It's kind of crazy that it's so easy to access this. But they build these things just as simple as they can. What I'm trying to do is get a closer look at the cylinder wall underneath the piston skirt and see if there's any evidence of scoring. And it looks alright. Look how loose that cylinder is though. So because that's loose, it's sucking air at where the cylinder base gasket would be. Now, this is a low-cost trimmer. If I have to pull the cylinder and get a new gasket, it's going to add more time to the repair. In a case like this where we have such low cost equipment, a lot of times if we can just come through like this and tighten the cylinder down and not even think about what the gasket might look like, and the customer gets another season or two of use out of it, then it's a win. If we have to put enough labor into it that they could have, you know, got over the halfway point towards a decent trimmer, then I don't know if we're winning or not. I hate to see things just thrown away, but you know, you got to consider what you're working with and how much money you're willing to stick into it. So basically tightening those two screws was the repair. We got them tight, and we're going to put this thing back together and see if it's going to run. So those 3 screws I took out, 2 of them were fine thread and 1 was coarse thread. The 2 fine thread screws go around where that end cap was at the crankshaft. They're going into the aluminum crankcase. And that 3rd screw is just going into plastic. So I got it tightened down, but I kind of goofed up here. And I notice it right now. There's the locating pin between that orange housing and the black housing. And I don't have that lined up right. There's that big gap there. So we'll just kind of get that lined up the way it's supposed to be. And then run the screws back in there again. Get them torqued down to spec. And put our last screw in. So essentially that's the repair. We're going to put this spark plug back in, keep the cost down. Then we'll see if this thing's going to start. And if it does, we might have to do a few carburetor adjustments. But if it runs good, then that's all I'm going to have for you on the Remington string trimmer that wouldn't start because it had a loose cylinder. Thanks for watching. Later.